Hi, this is Miss Litton, and this is 7th period support, AP Biology. Say hi.
Hi.
And we are reviewing Chapter 1 for a quiz tomorrow. So let's talk about a few basics about quizzes in here. How many questions are going to be on that quiz? 5. 5 questions will be on that quiz. Did we talk about a lot of things in that chapter?
Yes.
We did, okay? So you are going to have less than 70 questions on your AP exam when you take your exam at the end of the school year over everything. You are going to have they're going to just pick here and there some questions. That's why you have to know everything well, so that the few questions they ask you can be very successful on those. So 5 questions. You're going to need a 5-function calculator. Now, I have those for you in class. If you don't have one yet of your own, remember they're right there in the back, because I'm going to ask you to do a chi-square test. So if you don't have a 5-function calculator now, I mean, you can use whatever you have now, but you're going to need one for the quiz, only 5-function. You can grab one in the back if you don't have one now, and a piece of paper and a pen, okay? And it's going to be all multiple choice or multiple answers possible, which means like A and C could both be correct, so you want to be ready for that. I am going to spend a minute going over content, but before I do, since I just told you they're going to be multiple choice questions, what would be the best way to prepare for this quiz? I didn't hear what he said. Yes. Oh, how sad. Okay, what would be the best way? Let me ask you this. How many of you have your driver's license right now? How many are going to try to get their driver's license this year? Okay, now, what are you going to do before you go to the driver's test? Okay, so are you going to say, hey, look, there's a car, I can see it. There's a car, look, that's what a car does. I've watched my mom drive my car like 1,000,000 times. I'm sure I'll do good on the test. No, what do you need to do? Practice, practice, practice. And just because you practice a lot doesn't mean that you're a good driver. There's plenty of those people on the road, okay? So you need to have good practice, okay? You need somebody to give you feedback. If you are something with a target, right? Like if you're golfing, every time I practice, I want to practice aiming for something, right? Not just throw it out there to the world. It's got to get to a place. Right? You need to make sure that you are taking and putting yourself in a quiz-like environment, and you're checking it like a test. If you do this, which I've seen many students do, which is super, super, super sad, okay? They'll go to chapter 1, they'll see the questions that are there, and they'll go, okay, it's probably B or C, maybe B, probably B or C, and then they flip to the back where the answer's, oh, C. Oh, yeah, I could tell it's C. All right. And then they look at the next one. It's probably A. Oh, it's D. Oh, yeah, I didn't read that right. Okay, so, and then you make, excuses for not being successful, and then you wonder why you're not successful on a, quiz in here. So that's what I'm telling you. Put yourself in a testing situation. There are probably, I could look right now. Are you looking for a seat, sweetheart? Oh, okay. All right, so if I go to chapter 1 here, and I'm looking, on chapter 1 it has reviewing the big ideas. They're all listed here. Do you know the 4 big ideas? Tell them to me right now. What was the first one? Evolution, energy, information. See how smart you are? Okay. So here, they're linking the topics in this chapter to the big ideas. Do you think that's a good idea? When you're doing the ed puzzles, what do I keep saying in all the questions I'm asking you? It's more important to what? Understand and apply than what? Memorize. Okay? Can I answer a question for you, sweetheart?
Is it 7th period today?
This is 7th period for AP Bio. There's a master schedule on my Google site, and if you, is he, hello? Okay. In case you're wondering, you could go see Ms. Chevalier for that support, but he's gone. Okay, so this is showing you those links. Link now. Practice linking to the big ideas now. Don't wait till right before the AP exam. Go, oh, look at those connections right there. There's a good little summary. I don't know how many of you read the chapter. It's okay not to read the chapter. I mean, if that's what works for you is reading, by all means, read the chapter. Those of you that struggle with reading, what would be another way to attack this chapter? Look at all the bold words, look at the titles, and study every diagram. Did you hear me on that? And that's what you should do before we start talking chemistry, not next class, but the class after. You should look at all the bold titles, look at all the sections, look at any diagrams, and make yourself familiar. You should do that. Read the summary, look at the big ideas, look at all the, review it. Then look at the Go paper, read it through. Remember, there is input studying and there is output studying. Input studying is reading, looking, seeing diagrams. And that is a great way to study. But to really know, I can read about cars, I can read that that's the gas pedal, I can read where the brakes are, and then I should merge onto the right. But it's until I actually practice output studying, moving the car around and driving, that I'm going to really know if I know it or not. Some of you already do this all the time. Some of you haven't bought into it yet. Some of you have been able to get by because you're bright enough. It will catch up with you this year. So if you're asking the question, and I read through all of your, did you see that I took you to the beach yesterday? When I read through, some of you are like reading about your study habits. Some of your study habits were really good that I saw. Some were a little weak. And some of you said, I want to have better study habits. So I am telling you, there's prepping for class, there's in class, and after class. Prepping for class, do as much as you can. Right? For this chapter, that's done. That's come and gone. Right? In class, stay focused. Once you get out of class, do your input studying, but do your output. Take as many practice questions, quizzes as you can. You have this one right here. Take every single one of those questions. Take it like a test. Whatever you miss, go and study that section, and you could redo it. One strategy that I know some students would do, take all the odd ones the first time. Go make all your corrections. What did you miss? Then go through it, and this time take all the even ones. Okay? Get in a study group if it helps you. Read the suggestions other students had. Read the suggestions that I have on your course syllabus. Okay? Questions about just how to study, when to study, what the test is going to be like that you want to ask me before I get started. Okay, awesome. So the first part on here, we did the characteristics of life. So very quickly, let's go through those and let me mention what kind of questions I would have. Ready? Here we go. Living things are organized, made of cells. Pause. Let's talk about how they're organized. It goes how? Atoms, molecules, organelles, cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, organisms, population, community, ecosystem, biosphere. Do you know what all those words mean? What's the difference between a population and a community? Population is a group of all the same species. Community is several different species. What's the difference between a community and an ecosystem? Yeah, you have abiotic things coming in like weather and rain, the environment with those species. What's the difference between a tissue and an organ? Tissue makes up the organ. You could have several different tissues that makes up one organ, right? What do we call it when the properties change as you go up in organization? Properties one level didn't have it all. What is that called? Starts with an E. No. Dolphins. Thank you. Emergent. I didn't hear. Emergent properties. How are you going to remember that? Because it's emerging like, oh, look, a new characteristic, a new trait, right? A whole population of ants can do more things than just a single ant, right? Now, I want you to do a self-check this very moment, okay? Tell yourself the truth. The best way to come into 7th period is with you already having studied and reviewed all the key words and have read through the notes. Because what's happening if you haven't done that, I'm trying to get you to recall things from a week ago. Right? If you haven't looked at it in a week, you're spending time trying to remember back to a week ago. But today would be more efficient and more productive for you if you had, at the very minimum, read through the group shared notes before you showed up in class today. Now tell yourself the truth. Did you prepare well for this review session right now? Or is this the first time you've talked about this since I lectured on it? Tell yourself, your inside voice, the truth. Now tell your bio buddy, whoever's sitting next to you, the truth about it. Okay. Now, listen to me. You're laying down study habits and choices. You're going to start developing patterns for how you handle this class. I'm going to tell you right now, you either believe me and buy into it or not. I've seen it, I've taught, right, a long time. I know what works for most students. I am trying to save you time. This is how you save yourself time. If you had just spent 15 minutes reviewing now, it would save you a half an hour on the back end. You know what I mean? You'd be ahead 15 minutes because you prepared your brain for what we're going to talk about today. So if you need to improve your game on that, improve your game. Okay? If you had at lunchtime just come in here quietly and had your lunch and read through the group shared notes, and then when I'm reviewing it now, you're like, yep, I know it. And you know what else that gives you? It gives you confidence. Because every question I'm asking, you're like, totally know it, totally know it, totally know it. Start to feel a little bit better about yourself. You don't sit there dithering over C or T, C or T, C or T. Okay? You'll know which one is right because you spent the time preparing for it. Okay? So, coming back to this, we said living things are organized what? Made of cells. They acquire materials and energy. They maintain homeostasis. They respond to stimuli and reproduce. They grow and develop, and they adapt and die. So when we talk about organization, we already talked all about that, okay? They acquire materials and energy. So they need energy, right, so that they can keep up their metabolism. What is their metabolism? What's the definition of metabolism? All the enzyme-mediated reactions of your body? Yes. Okay? If you have a reaction in your body that requires an enzyme, some of those reactions could be exergonic, releasing energy overall, net overall release. Some could be endergonic, but all the reactions that occur in your body are part of your metabolism. What is the next one? They maintain homeostasis. What does that mean, to maintain homeostasis? You keep your insides basically what? Stable, constant. You don't want anything to get too high or get too low. We have systems in our body to help us keep it just right. We have an excretory system to get rid of our waste, right? So we don't have toxic chemicals. But we have our liver who removes toxic chemicals. We have pores that can sweat to cool us down. We have hormones that work to keep everything just right. We have our nervous system and can make us close or open capillary beds in order to maintain homeostasis. There are a lot of systems involved, and it's trying to keep it constant. All right? They what? Respond to stimuli. Remember we talked about even behavior would be a coordinated response? Now, somebody could startle you, and they scare you, and like, and you go, okay? What do we call that? It's just a quick response like that. Reflex, okay? So some plants, like if you touch them or you touch a anemone, what do they do when you touch them? They what? They close, okay? So that's a reflex. It's protective, right? It could be a bird who, if they need a mating, they just automatic reflex. They're like, I'm available, okay? So there's all different reflexes that we can have. But a coordinated response is what's called a behavior, right? And the reason why it could have to do with some sort of way to maintain our homeostasis, to maintain our metabolism, either we need energy, right? or we need to cool ourselves off, or maybe it's so that we can do the next part, which is reproduce. And when we talked about reproduction, it could be sexual or it could be what? Asexual. What was the asexual word that no, there's parthenogenesis, I haven't gone into any of that, but I did give you 2 words. Yes?
Binary fission.
Boom, binary fission. Exactly. And bacteria can do that and just split into 2 cells. Sexual reproduction would require a what? And a maybe a sperm and a egg, right? There's different ways we'll learn about it with fungi and haploid hyphae, but right now we know the purpose of that. And then to grow and to develop, okay? So you're going to have to make more cells. You're going to have to mature over time, and we will have a whole chapter on that. They adapt. What is an adaptation? Look to the person next to you. Identify whoever has the lightest colored shirt on. Whoever has the lightest colored shirt, whoever's the closest to the line, say, tell me what an adaptation is, light-shirted one. Go ahead. What would you call, come back to me, what would be an adaptation? Something that makes you what? Survive. Better suited to that environment, right, is an adaptation, right? You accrue enough adaptations over time that makes you a different species. What's that a good example of? Evolution, exactly. Okay, and there are lots of ways for evolution to occur, but what's the most common mechanism for evolution to occur? 2 words. Natural selection. What do we hear in that? Nature. Nature is selecting. Why are giraffes' necks long? Because they've stretched them their whole life? No. Because why? The giraffes with the longest necks could get the most food. Right? If you have a shorter neck, you can get all these leaves. But if you have a tall neck, you can get these leaves and these leaves, right? So whoever gets the most food is going to be the what? Biggest and the strongest, and is going to get the most sex and then babies. Yes. Okay, so they're going to have more offspring, so over time, necks are going to get longer and longer and longer. Could a neck ever be too long? Yes. Have you seen them get a drink of water? If you watch a giraffe get a drink of water, they're like, and they're like, give their legs and like, ooh, and that neck. What's going to happen to that blood pressure when they lean over like that? Because their heart is beating like this to get the blood up to the very tall of their head. Now they're leaning up, right? So yes, it could be too tall. Okay, and then life dies. Okay, right? It comes to an end, right? Unless it's an immortal. Okay. Sorry, do you know what I was doing right there? It was a reference to 300. When he kicked him in the well. Don't watch that movie. It's a terrible movie. Okay, so, and then they die. All right. So, where did all this life come from? What was that ancestor we talked about? Tell me. My name is Luca. Good. So we went over the 4 big ideas already, so I'm not going to hit them again. But we talked about the last universal common ancestor. We talked about natural selection being the mechanism for evolution. On this one, we want to see that chemicals what? Cycle and energy flows. And the reason why we say that, chemical cycle, is we have whatever we have here on Earth, right? We're not getting any more stuff, right? Like a meteor, whatever. Okay. And then energy flows. Where does all energy ultimately come from? The sun. Right, the big yellow one's the sun. Perfect. Okay, so we did that, we did that, we did that. I feel good about that. I like that. We went over this, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and we went over this about emergent properties. Okay, then we came to the science practices, right? How we do science, about making models. And then we pretty much focused on the scientific method, right? But we talked about developing hypotheses, and then we talked about evaluating those hypotheses. And when you write a hypothesis, how do you know when to reject it? Like I did an experiment. How do I know when to reject it? Yes?
It's based on like if you used an equation to test it.
Yeah, if you used an equation to test it, you can use some math on it and see if it's statistically significant. That would be one way to whether we're going to accept or reject our hypothesis, right? So we're going to use some math on that so we know. Does this data support my hypothesis? Is it statistically significant? Can I use it? And we talked about the two types of hypotheses, but just real quickly, you remember independent and dependent variable? What's the stuff that I'm writing down and recording in my lab book? Dependent. How fast, how many discs of your little leaves, right? How many float at 5 minutes or 10 minutes? That's data, right? That's your dependent variable. What's our independent variable in our experiment tomorrow? Yeah, we're saying how much carbon dioxide. What's something else we could do in this lab?
Light.
How much light that or the color of the light that we use, right? There's lots of things we can change, but we want to have quantitative data we can measure. Once we can have numbers, we can decide if it's statistically significant or not. So we talked about the two hypotheses, the research hypothesis and the null hypothesis. But if I wanted to just distill those two down, right? The research hypothesis, I'm saying there's a connection between A and B. And I'm looking to see if my data supports that connection, right? So if I have more CO2, then they will do more photosynthesis, right? That would be a research hypothesis. A null hypothesis says there is not a connection between A and B. And in that case, I'm saying it doesn't matter how much CO2 I give it, it will not influence how much they do photosynthesis. Okay? Now, it's easier to disprove a null sometimes than to support a research. So that's why you write a null. If you write a null, then you can say, conversely, there probably is a connection if you have data, right, that is statistically significant. And we talked about how do we know when it is significant. Let me take you there. Oh, I already did that. We're good. We're good. We talked about that. We went to, do you remember this? Right? Okay. This is what you're going to want to be familiar with. Okay? Is in essence, now here this is telling you I only have 2 choices in my data, but I could have 3 choices or 4 choices or 5, right? Just depends on how many columns I have I'm recording data in. How many are you going to have for your lab tomorrow? 2 columns, right? You're going to have with CO2 and without. So when you analyze your data, how many degrees of freedom do you have? 1, because you always take 1 away, right, when we're looking at the chart? You know what that's talking about? Look at your bio buddies. Did you know what she's talking about right now? Okay. So, I know we didn't get to all classes. Did we get to finish this? So let's just run through this super fast together, this example, okay? Because I'm going to give you one to do on your quiz tomorrow, so I want you to be comfortable with it. All right, so let's talk it through how I would approach this problem. Okay, so I'm saying this is a null hypothesis. A null hypothesis, what is this saying? There's no what? No connection between the sex you are, your gender, and what job you have, right? I'm saying there's no connection there. Okay? Doesn't matter male, female, doesn't impact your job or your ability to get a job or anything like that. Okay? So here I'm making an observation. Okay? 35.2% of all the chemists in the world are women. Now, in the world, how many people are, generally speaking, are women? Half. Okay, so 50% are females, right? And I would then expect that what? 50% are males, right? This is what I would expect, right? That's what I expect. However, what do I observe in this situation? How many were female? 35.2. Okay, so now to solve for the male, okay, on what I observed, all I need to know is this adds up to 100. So 100 minus 35.2, then that's how many males that are chemists, right? So how many males are there that are chemists? 64.8. Okay? So then all I have to do is go, okay, this is what I see, this is what I expected, what's the difference? So I take the difference between these two values. So 35.2 minus 50, what's my difference on that?
14.8.
What is it? 14.8. It's the same difference over here, right? Because if I'm not this, I'm this. So this would be negative 14.8, right? And this would be positive 14.8. Are we okay with that? Okay, so that's my difference. This is what I saw. This is what I expected. Here's my difference. What do I need to do to that difference? Square it. So all I have to do is square each of these numbers, right? And then put that over what? What I expected. What did I expect?
50.
I expected 50. And then this number this letter right here just means chi, means sum up. So I'm just going to add both those numbers together. So what's 14.8 squared? Somebody doing that? You all have calculators in front of you. 219. Do you agree? Okay. No?
With some decimals.
With some decimals. Okay. Divided by what? 50. So what is that? Practice that. Some of you are watching your mother drive your car. You should all be driving a car right now. Do you understand what I'm saying? Don't watch your mother drive. You need to practice driving. Use this on your calculator. All right. So what is, come back to me, what's 14.8 divided by 50? I mean 14.8 squared divided by 50. What's that number?
4.38.
What is it?
4.38.
So this is going to be 4.32, right? Oh, yeah, I mean, as well. Okay? So 4.3 plus 4.3 is equal to what? 8.6. Does that sound significant? Yes. It does sound significant because we know when we look at the table. Oh, I got 4.4. Oh, I need a table. I need a table. Here's a table. Okay? How many choices did I have? 2. Right? Male or female. Take away 1. Okay? So it means I have 1 degree of freedom here. So if I take my 1 degree of freedom and I look across here, I need to find where that number shows up. What's our number that we're looking for?
8.76.
8.6. Do you see where that number shows up? This is 6.64 and this is 10.83. So I'm thinking our number shows up right here. Do you agree? Okay. Is that acceptable? Could that be due to chance? Could that deviation squared be due to chance? No. Okay, anything over 3.84 when you have 1 degree of freedom that is some significant deviation that we have there. So what does that tell me? My data did not support my null hypothesis. Remember what my null hypothesis was? It was like, there's no connection. It's not even a problem. It's fine. Okay? I get the data and I'm like, damn. Okay? So that tells me then that I can't say there's no connection. So the alternative is saying there's some sort of connection between job choice and gender, or job ability and gender. There's other things to research, but definitely gender plays a part in whether you're a chemist or not. You follow that? Mm-hmm. Clarifying questions on that? Yes?
Are we going to use that, like, will we have that provided on
The equation? Yes, because on the AP exam you will get the equation.
the chart?
Yes, if you need the chart, it'll always be provided.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Should we round to the nearest 10?
You know what? That's such a great question. On the AP exam, they will tell you, round to the nearest whole number, round to the 10th, round to the 100th. Yeah, they'll always tell you what to round to so you know. Okay? Yes?
So like everyone here got 8.6, but I got 8.7. Like, is that a?
Just because we
It was probably some rounding earlier on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does that affect everything?
It can, but you guys, if it's a multiple choice test, you'll know. It's not like one of your choices I would have given you is 8.5, 8.6, 8.4, 8.7, because you'll be like, so that's not going to happen, all right? So it would be like really obvious, okay? Now, here's the other thing. Ouch. You have some questions on your AP exam where you're gonna have to bubble in. They don't give you, okay? There'll be 5 questions where you have to bubble in your choice. When they set up their grading parameters, they make a window of what's acceptable when they grade it. You'll see that when we get to it, but you don't have to worry about that because that's not tomorrow. Tomorrow is a multiple choice, okay? All right, so let's see. I think I have, yes, I have a bunch of questions that are similar to the questions I would ask you on the test. So let's do them. You want to go into classlab.com. I'll do them quickly. You can do it on whatever you like. The only time you have to use a Chromebook is when we are taking a quiz or a test. Okay, remember, go to classlab.com. Okay, and remember, don't put this space in, right? Don't put this space in. They just do that for chunking purposes. And if you're watching at home, I'm going to pause this for a minute because you won't be able to see the questions. Okay, then. So let me resume the recording and we will go over the end here. All right. Ultimate, yay! Did everybody get that? You did. Oh, come on. Not hard. Oh, I'm a highlighter. Sorry. Right answer. It's natural selection. Guys, stop. Luca, no. That is not the mechanism for evolution. Who is Luca? Universal common answer. ATP. That's like the energy currency of the cell. Emergent properties, those are properties that are acquired as you move up in organization. Adaptation is something that makes you better suited to the environment and would probably be selected for. Natural selection was the right word. Questions now? Now? Okay. Number 3. What do you call a concept that joins together well-supported and related hypotheses? Right there is little theory.
I put scientific.
Okay, scientific theory would work. Okay, but it's theory. Well-supported hypotheses are a theory. Okay. Guys, I have to be somewhere, so we need to finish, okay? So what you saw there, and where I could see you going, what joins together, so you're like, oh, A supports B. Research hypothesis, okay? All right? But you needed to read the whole thing, which is saying, I'm bringing a bunch of hypotheses together. What do I call the next level up? A theory, okay? And last but not least, quantitative data is measurable. True. Okay, stop. Any questions? All right, study, review, do a chi-square test. I'm already proud of you. Make good choices.